Okay guys, you know the drill by now. Fletch here bringing you a Premier League preview show, previewing this weekend's games in the Premier League. We are now at game 17. The games are still continuing to come thick and fast. The plot is continuing to thicken. This is gonna be awesome. There are some massive games this weekend. But of course, there's only one place to begin, so without further ado, let's get down to business. Only one place to begin, and we kick things off with the biggest game of the round and the biggest game in English football in Liverpool versus Manchester United. This game pits together the top two most successful and biggest clubs England has to offer, but right now, one club is enjoying life a hell of a lot more than what the other one is. Liverpool are currently sat top of the table, although of course that could change come kick-off depending on the Manchester City versus Everton result. But they are aiming to remain there regardless following this weekend. And they're also coming off the back of a great victory midweek when they beat Napoli, and in doing so, it enabled them to qualify for the knockout stages of the Champions League, so they're still alive and kicking in that competition. As for United, a fan base that's had very little to cheer for this season, the majority are wanting Jose Mourinho out of their club due to their poor style of play, his comments that he's made to the media, and the team's poor standing in the table, with the Red Devils currently sat in 6th place, 6 points off of 4th, and 8 points off of 4th, and 16 points off their opponents and league leaders Liverpool. Will the Reds remain top of the table come Sunday evening, or will Jose Mourinho give the United fans something to be happy about and beat Jurgen Klopp's side, ending their unbeaten run? This game should be fairly easy to predict. However, when you scratch the surface, it may be more difficult than it may first appear. Going into the game, Liverpool are facing a mini crisis defensively. Last week saw Joe Gomez ruled out for several weeks. This week has saw Joe Matip also become sidelined. So it seems that Dejan Lovren will be starting alongside Virgil van Dijk in the heart of the defence. But at right back, there's more concern. Both Trent Alexander-Arnold and James Milner came off injured midweek. Milner played at right back against Bournemouth last weekend. And against Napoli, his injury didn't seem too serious, but it's definitely something worth considering. Another thing not going in Liverpool's way is the fact that Mourinho seems to have Klopp's number when it comes to this head-to-head clash they have. But based on how things have changed, I'm still backing Liverpool to win here. It will also be worth paying extra close attention to the aftermath of this game. If this is to be the complete demolition job done by the Reds on the Red Devils that many people are predicting, it could be seen as Mourinho's last game, or should be seen as his last game in the eyes of many of the United faithful. As I said, I think Jurgen Klopp's side will remain both unbeaten and top of the league, and I'm going to say a 3-1 scoreline, with Mohamed Salah continuing his good run of form, along with getting a goal or two as well. The next game I'm going to be focusing on is the big game that kicks off the Premier League weekend, as Manchester City, looking to bounce back from their defeat to Chelsea last weekend, face Marco Silva's Everton, who are looking to get back to winning ways following 3 games of a winless run on the bounce. City were knocked off top spot last week by Liverpool and completely missed a chance to retake that spot by losing 2-0 to Maurizio Sarri's Chelsea, whilst Everton suffered a frustrating week in which they lost the Merseyside derby, drew to Newcastle, and then rescued a point very late on against Watford on Monday night. Who's going to return to winning ways in this game? The roles reversed from last week, as this week it's the turn of Manchester City to put a bit of pressure on league leaders Liverpool before they face Manchester United on Sunday. But again, this could be a little bit more difficult to call than what many people are thinking. City will be without key players for this big game. Kevin De Bruyne and David Silva are both ruled out through injury, although Sergio Aguero could make his return. Everton have proven to be tough opposition and are very capable of taking advantage of a City side that's a squad being a little bit stretched right now. So it will be interesting to see if Phil Foden starts for Pep Guardiola this weekend. But if you're looking for a score prediction from me, I think City will just scrape through, especially if Aguero is fit enough to play. I'm going to say a 2-1 City win. Leroy Sané and Raheem Sterling to get among the goals for Pep Guardiola's title defending side. The next game features two teams at opposite ends of the table. The fight for Premier League survival continues for Southampton as new manager Ralph Hasenhüttl takes charge of his second game as Saints boss, whilst at the other end, Arsenal are looking to maintain their fight for a top 4 finish, and that is why it's another tough test for Southampton ahead. Also, it doesn't help that Unai Emery's Arsenal are currently on a 22-game unbeaten run and are looking to make it 23 in all competitions. On his managerial debut in the Premier League, Hasenhüttl watched as his new Southampton side lost to Cardiff City by 1-0, whilst the Gunners beat Huddersfield by the same scoreline, with the informed Lucas Torreira grabbing the decisive goal. Will Hasenhüttl gain his first win as Saints boss here, or will the Gunners stretch their unbeaten run to 23 games? Southampton's problems this season are at both ends of the pitch. Defensively, they are conceding too many goals due to too many individual mistakes, and at the other end, in the attacking end, they just aren't clinical enough in front of goal, and it's Ralph Hasenhüttl's job to inject some confidence into his forwards and to train his defence to be much more stronger and resolute going forward. As for Arsenal, they've been unbelievable at times this season, and then at other times they've been mediocre. But the difference between now and last season is that a mediocre Arsenal side this year has become stronger and are grinding out results the hard way in comparison to previous years where they would have just crumbled. I can see Arsenal winning and stretching their unbeaten run to 23 games. I'm going to say a 3-0 Arsenal win, with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang scoring a brace and Alexander Lacazette also getting on the score sheet. Our next game brings us to the Amex Stadium as it plays host to Brighton versus Chelsea, as Maurizio Sarri's side look to maintain their hold on a top 4 spot, as well as look to close the gap on the teams above them. Whilst Brighton will look to get back to winning ways following their 1-0 defeat to Burnley last weekend. Chelsea are coming off the back of an impressive win last weekend against Manchester City, in which N'Golo Kante and David Luiz both scored in the Blues' 2-0 win, and they'll also be looking to follow up that result with a win here. Can Chelsea beat the Seagulls, or will Chris Hughton's side deliver Chelsea a swift kick back down to earth? Big game for both sides. Brighton have proven this season that they're no pushovers, so this won't be an easy game by any means. Chelsea will be coming off from a high of last week's excellent victory, but they will need to win here for that victory to mean more. Otherwise, it wouldn't count for as much as what it did at the time. Regardless, I think Chelsea will win, and I think they will do it by 2-1, with Eden Hazard and Pedro among the goals, whilst Glenn Murray will reply for the Seagulls. Our next game brings us to relegation fighting Burnley, as the next chapter in their fight for survival takes them to Wembley, where Tottenham are awaiting. Spurs were victorious last weekend with a 2-0 win over Leicester, and their happiness grew further midweek when they progressed to the knockout stages of the Champions League thanks to a 1-1 draw with Barcelona. As for Burnley, they ended an 8-game winless run last weekend with a 1-0 victory over Brighton. Will Burnley shock people here by putting together back-to-back wins, or will Mauricio Pochettino cap off a great week with another win? Mauricio Pochettino has claimed Tottenham are back in the title race, and whilst yes, mathematically they are, realistically, and when you look at the bigger picture, it's a real tough ask for them. We know Spurs can be pretty hit and miss at times, and this is the kind of game that can be a potential banana skin for Tottenham, especially seeing as though it's been a tough and congested fixture list for Spurs in recent weeks. Burnley have been showing signs of improvement and an injection of fighting spirit in recent weeks, and they also have had the extra rest period themselves with not having to play midweek. I wouldn't be surprised if this ends in a draw, but I'm going to have to play it safe and go with a Spurs victory. 3-1 Spurs is what I'm going to have to predict. Harry Kane to score twice and Heung-min Son also to get on the score sheet is what I'm predicting. Saturday's evening game is next on the agenda, and it sees West Ham face Fulham at Craven Cottage. Fulham's revival under Claudio Ranieri hasn't got off to the best of starts. 1 win, 1 draw and 2 losses so far for Ranieri, and that includes last week's poor display in the 4-1 thrashing that Manchester United delivered to them. Whilst West Ham have put together a run of 3 wins on the bounce, and the Hammers are beginning to show their supporters and other fans alike what they're about. Last week wasn't entirely pretty, but they did eventually come out with a win, beating Crystal Palace 3-2. Well, will Fulham cause a respected upset here, or will West Ham make it 4 wins on the bounce? The prize here for Fulham is that a win is likely to lift them off the bottom of the table, and then they can build from there. But it's a case of, can they cut out all the individual mistakes that are helping them to concede goals? Because if they don't, West Ham will have a field day and will take full advantage of this, and I can see them creating a lot of chances and getting plenty of goals. As for West Ham themselves, they can possibly enter the top half of the table here with a victory, and with their recent form, it's hard to see them not achieving that this weekend. I'm going to predict a 3-1 victory for West Ham here. Couple of reasons for this. The first is that the Hammers occasionally seem vulnerable defensively, so I can see Fulham actually scoring, and also the Hammers have actually made a sort of they've made it a sort of habit of scoring 3 goals in games recently, so that's my reasoning for that. And I can see also Felipe Anderson scoring twice, as well as Lucas Perez to also get on the score sheet. Our next game sees 2 of the Premier League struggling teams come face to face at the John Smith Stadium when Huddersfield take on Newcastle. Both teams have followed small parallels this season. Both have been poor for the large part of the season, then both found a bit of good form several weeks ago, and then both have now fallen away again. Newcastle's good run of form was better than the Terriers, but after a few poor results, including last week's defeat to Wolves, in which they lost 2-1, Rafa Benitez's side are slowly sliding back into danger. Whilst Huddersfield were resolute for the large part against Arsenal last weekend, but were eventually undone in a 1-0 win for the Gunners, which made it no win in 3 games for David Wagner's side, who, out of the Terriers and the Magpies, will come out on top here. 2 teams that are in desperate need of 3 points is going to be an interesting encounter. Both have plenty of mistakes within them, both are not clinical enough in front of goal, and that was evident last week. Individual mistakes cost on both their respective games late on in their games last week, and missed chances were aplenty within them games as well. That's why I'm going to have to predict a draw here. Either 1-1 or 2-2. I'm probably going to go with 2-2 just because I think that with both teams having such poor defences, it may actually work in their favour, on the attacking side favour. But with the way that both sides have been going, I'm pretty confident on this prediction. Our next game sees 16th meet 9th as Crystal Palace take on Leicester at Selhurst Park. Both sides have gone 2 games without a win, with both sides suffering defeat last weekend, with Palace losing to West Ham 3-2 and the Foxes were beaten 2-0 by Spurs. Will one of these teams get back to winning ways here? For Palace, it's about battling for survival. For Leicester, it's about testing themselves to reach high and challenge for possible Europa League places. Both sides are guilty of not being exceptionally clinical in front of goal, but a huge boost for Leicester is that Jamie Vardy is back and in contention to feature in this game following a spell out on the sidelines. I think he will possibly be the difference maker in this game, in all honesty, especially if he's used as an impact sub, and that's why I'm going to give the slight edge to the Foxes here. I'm predicting a 2-1 Leicester win, Vardy to get the winner, James Maddison to score for Leicester initially, and Luka Milivojevic to score for Crystal Palace. We're at Vicarage Road next for our next game, as it plays host to Watford versus Cardiff. Monday night saw Watford suffer a late blow when Lucas Digne of Everton scored right at the death to rescue a point for the Toffees, whilst last weekend saw Neil Warnock's side record their 4th victory of the season by beating Southampton 1-0. Watford have now gone 6 games without a win. Will that run end here, or will Cardiff continue to aid their bid for survival? I said before that Cardiff have surprised me by how well they've done so far this season and since their return to the Premier League, and they will fancy their chances to continue to aid their survival bid here. Watford have a good squad, play some nice football at times, but have recently begun leaking goals, and whilst Cardiff may not be the most prolific or clinical, they work hard and will create opportunities for themselves. I think that Watford may just have a bit too much for Cardiff though, and will end their winless run here. I'm predicting a 2-1 Hornets win, Deeney and Pereira to get on the score sheet. And finally, Wolves take on Bournemouth, which is set to be an interesting and good game going down at Molineux. Last week, Wolves put together back-to-back wins against Chelsea and Newcastle, with the latter opponent losing via a late Matt Doherty goal, and now Wolves appear to have steadied the ship somewhat following a rocky period where results weren't quite falling in their favour. As for Bournemouth, they lost 4-0 to Liverpool last week, and as a result the Cherries dropped to 8th in the table, as Eddie Howe's side have endured an inconsistent spell in recent weeks. Will Wolves make it 3 wins on the bounce, or will Bournemouth get back to winning ways? Both sides who like to play nice, flowing and attacking football, so on paper it should make for a good game to watch, with plenty of chances at both ends. Wolves go into this game full of confidence with their back-to-back wins last week, whilst Bournemouth will try to look at their thrashing last week as a bit of a one-off. The upside for the Cherries is that Callum Wilson may be back for the game after missing the Liverpool game last week, but I think a draw is on the cards here. Regardless, I can honestly see this game going any way, so that's why I'm going to call it down the middle for a draw. I'm going to say 2-2 is going to be the outcome. And that wraps up this Premier League preview show, previewing Game 17 of the 2018-19 season. Guys, if you have any thoughts or opinions on anything that I mentioned, any of the games I mentioned, whether you have score lines or scorers, kind of predictions of your own, I'd love to read and hear them in the comment section below. That'd be great to read. Otherwise, guys, hit the like button on the way out if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're new, or subscribe if you want to see more content like this. That too would be greatly appreciated. Thank you guys for watching and listening. I've been Fletch. This has been another Fletch Talks Premier League preview show, and I will see you and speak with you all again soon in another video.